says, nevertheless, the gloom of the distressed land will not be like that of former times, when he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, he will bring honor to the way of the sea, and to the land east of the Jordan, and to Galilee of the nations. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. A light has dawned on those living in the land of darkness. You have enlarged the nation and increased its joy. The people have rejoiced before you as they rejoice at harvest time, and they rejoice when dividing spoils. For you have shattered their oppressive yoke and the rod on their shoulders, the staff of their oppressors, just as you did on the day of Midian. For every trampling boot of battle and the bloodied garments of war will be burned as fuel for the fire. For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. The dominion will be vast, and its prosperity will never end. He will reign on the throne as David and over his kingdom to establish and sustain it with justice and righteousness from now on and forever. The zeal of the Lord of armies will accomplish this. Today we're talking all about hope. We just sang a song that said, O come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel that mourns in lonely exile here until the Son of God appear. And we rejoice, rejoice. Emmanuel shall come to you, O Israel. We wait, and we have accepted that hope. But what really is hope? It's a desire or an expectation of obtainment or fulfillment. In other words, it's a confident expectation or desire for something good in the future. Hope is placed on what you think will bring you satisfaction and fulfillment in life. So when we talk about hope, it's not where we go, well, I hope so, or I hope they get better, or I hope my family doesn't fight on Thanksgiving, or I hope my mother-in-law doesn't bring that casserole. It's not very good. That's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about that when you buy a plane ticket, you expect that when you hand that plane ticket over, you're going to get on that plane, right? You have hope. There's stories about people having a plane ticket and they did not get on that plane, right? You hear those announcements from time to time. But that's hope. I expect to be able to do something or receive something good because I have this. But here's my question. When it comes to the satisfaction of your life, when it comes to your happiness, when it comes to the things you want out of life, what do you place your hope in? Well, a lot of us, we put our hope in love, that we find that special someone, and we'll just have our happily ever after, right? We put our hope in family, that you'll be a mom, you'll be a dad. We put our hope in money and how much we have of it. We put our hope in our education, that because I have this degree, I'll be able to get this job and have this career. We put our hope in our power and influence over other people. We even put our hope in our health. That's why we'll say things like, well, as long as my family is happy and healthy, I'm good. And you know what someone's hope is when you start talking to them. When they say, as long as my family is good, as long as I have my girlfriend, as long as business is doing okay, as long as we have something left for retirement, as long as we have our health. But here's the whole problem. When you put your hope in all of those things, issues come up, don't they? People get broken up with. Businesses fail. Believe it or not, everybody's health at some point is going to completely stop working, right? Everyone's going to die. And as we look at what the Israelites are going through, they're putting their hope in a lot of the same things. That as long as their country is doing good, and as long as they got money and they have wealth, as long as they're not having to go and fight all these people, as long as everything is working out in their nation, everything will be good. And so what King Ahaz does is to make sure that everything is going great. He starts making all of these deals. And he says, hey, will you be my friend? And will you be my friend? And will you be my friend? And so when it comes to war or anything else, they have all these treaties, and so no one will attack them and everything will be good. But guess what? It wasn't good. All the people that he had made friends with started to attack him. Well, he starts to freak out. And so he starts to make rash decisions. Have you ever made a rash decision when things aren't going your way? Yeah, I have. I don't know about you. When I feel uncomfortable, when I feel like my whole world is crashing around me, I'll start making compromises and making excuse for why I make those compromises, and I'll just start doing whatever I can to stop the bleeding. Well, that's what King Ahaz does. Instead of trusting in God and saying, God, we turn back to you, we trust in you, not all these alliances, he goes to an even worse country that was more powerful, and he makes this deal with Assyria. And Assyria takes care of all these enemies, no problem. But King Ahaz, instead of thanking the Lord, he begins to go, well, what does Assyria have that I don't have? And he starts adopting other gods. He starts making all of these compromises in his life. And what Isaiah is telling them is, you can do that. You can make those compromises in your life. But Assyria will destroy you. See, whenever we put our hope in any of these other things, at some point, these things that we thought were going to give us real satisfaction absolutely ends up destroying us when we push God out of the equation. So what do we hope in? What should we put our hope in to make sure that we are really satisfied in life? And that what we're investing our entire life into is really worth it. That's what we're talking about today. We're talking all about a hope that really never fails. And I'm going to be talking about 3 different points. 1, there is hope. 2, God rescues his people. And 3, God's plan is Jesus. Let's talk about this first part, that there is hope. That's just what the word of the Lord has to say. It says, but there will be no gloom for her who was in anguish. In the former time, he brought into contempt the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the later time, he has made glorious the way of the sea and the land beyond the Jordan and Galilee of the nations. The people who walked in darkness, they have seen a great light. And those who dwelt in the land of deep darkness, on them a light has shone. You have multiplied the nation. You have increased its joy. They rejoice before you with joy at the harvest, as they are glad when they divide the spoil. So again, when we look at Israel, they're in a lot of sin. They're in a lot of anguish. They're in a lot of pain. And maybe you feel like this. This is a tough time, especially if you've lost a loved one recently. You just start to think about them and you're just in anguish and you're in pain. Maybe you're like Israel. When you really look at your life and you're really being honest with yourself, man, you've made a lot of choices that go against your better judgment. And now you find yourself in an absolute mess. Your pain, your anguish, your worry about what's going to happen, and all the stuff that you put your hope into seems to really be crumbling. And it's become a really, really hard season, not really a joyful season. And so as Israel's looking at what they should put their hope into, they look around and they go, there's nothing. The nation's doing bad. The nation's going to be destroyed. There's no wealth. There's no health. Everything that we thought was great is gone. But now there is a new situation. There's a brand new situation. In the midst of their despair, in the midst of their hopelessness, in the midst of them feeling worthless, they receive a word from God and a word from heaven that says, listen to this, their gloom is about to turn into rejoicing. Their distress is about to be turned into joy. Their oppression is about to be broken, so no one's going to oppress them. The darkness will turn to light, and the shadow of death will be overcome. Pretty good stuff, right? Everything is changing. And so how did the people react? Well, they immediately change everything about how they're feeling. All of their gloom is turned into rejoicing. Even when they were in deep darkness, it's now in the light. Everything about their life is completely changing. In fact, because of the light, they're about to walk in a totally different direction. Everything that they were doing, they're leaving it behind because they see a new way and a better hope for them. And how do they feel about this total life change? Their joy is increased. In fact, it says that they rejoice like they would at harvest time. If you know anything about Old Testament harvest time, they would have something called the Festival of the Booths. And it's a really, really great time. And as you could imagine, right, as a farmer, you kind of get paid one big thing a year, right, when the harvest comes and you could really accept everything. So imagine you're really struggling all the way up into the harvest, and then all of a sudden you have more than enough for the whole year. That would make you pretty happy, right? I don't know about you. I've been, I've had a time in my life where I lived paycheck to paycheck, and when I first got that paycheck, man, we're going out to eat, we're having a good time. By the time I'm waiting for that paycheck to come, I'm eating ramen, right? I barely feel like I can afford the water in the bowl, right? I'm like trying to take the season packet and make it really last. Just me? Nobody else struggled? That's fine. All right. Well, I've struggled. So when I get that paycheck and it hits, man, I'm like, let's go to Sonic. Let's get some drinks. Let's have a good time because I have more than enough that should help us make it through the month. And that's how they feel like, but it's for the whole year. And then imagine this. If you work, you're pretty sure you're going to get a paycheck, right? Not with the harvest. The harvest could come. And it'd be great, and everything's great. But one storm come in, mess up your entire harvest. So not only are they rejoicing when it comes to the harvest because they have more than enough, but that it actually came. They actually do have more than enough. They're not wondering anymore whether it will come or how long they're going to have to struggle or how bad it's going to be. Their big check hits their bank account, guaranteed. They got it. It's in their hands. So imagine how much they're rejoicing when the harvest comes. All of our hard work, all of our hope, all of the stuff that we put everything behind has come true. And it's saying this new situation where a light has shone, where our gloom has become rejoicing. That's the feeling. That everything that we invested into, that it's either going to work or it's not, they're going to rejoice because it's worked. They're going to rejoice because it's worth investing their life into. All of their needs are taken care of. Paul says this in Ephesians chapter 1. It says, having the eyes of your hearts enlightened, that you may know what is the hope to which he has called you, and what are the riches of his glorious inheritance in the saints. It's rejoicing because all of the stuff that they've been waiting for to satisfy them has been given to them. And what they're really rejoicing in more than anything is that where they were separated from God in deep darkness, they are now brought back into the presence of God again. See, the problem with Israel during this time is not health. It's not wealth. It's not prosperity. It's not the fact that they have oppressors or anything else. Here's the biggest problem of Israel. They pushed God out of their life, and they separated themselves from the presence of God. And now, God is brought back near to them. That's what they were created for. And let me tell you, where their greatest need is to be in the presence of God and be in relationship with God, that's your greatest need this holiday season as well. Everybody wants a dog. Let me tell you, a dog's not going to satisfy you like Jesus. You've been praying for that new job. You've been praying for that husband or wife coming up. You've been praying for that baby. You've been praying for something. Nothing will satisfy you like Jesus will. The reason why Israel has sought all these other things, the reason why you look after all these other things is you're wanting affirmation. You want people to say that you're so great. You want power so that you can make the calls. You want comfort in your life. You want control. And the best these things can do is be a shadow of the satisfaction that God wants to give you in Jesus Christ. The reason why you're dissatisfied with things is because you weren't created for these other things. You were created to be in a relationship with Jesus first and foremost. That's more than health. That's more than wealth. That's more than prosperity. For them to really move from darkness into rejoicing, it has to be something much deeper than just something right in front of them. It has to be real joy from the Lord. Well, how are they going to move from this deep darkness into this light? How are they going to move from gloom to rejoicing? What happens? Listen to this. God rescues his people. This is what it says. It says, for the yoke of his burden and the staff of his shoulder and the rod of the oppressor, you have broken as on the day of Midian. For every brood of the trampling warrior and battle turmoil, and in every garment rolled in blood will be burned as fuel for the fire. We have hope in God because of what God has done. See, this verse begins by talking about the yoke and the staff and the rod. What it's doing is it's reminding the people of God about the oppression they received in Egypt, where they had a yoke. So they were forced to work. They couldn't go anywhere. It goes over your neck. They're just forced to move however the person wants to move. They had a staff to get them in the right direction, to pull them. So they're always subject to somebody else's will. And when they're trying to go in a different direction, there's a rod there to hit them back in place. You ever feel like your life is like that? I've been there. Where I want to experience something, but it feels like my life is subject to what other people want. That's a tough feeling. You're always worried about getting hit with that rod, right? You're always worried that if you don't do the right thing and go the right way and look the right way and talk the right way, that everybody will reject you. But Isaiah is reminding the reader of how faithful God is then and how faithful God is now. Because what did God do for his people in Egypt? He set them free. He performed miracle after miracle after miracle. And when they tried to do their own thing, what did he do? He waited patiently with them in the wilderness. And then he gave them a land, listen, that already had buildings, that already had vineyards, that already had everything set up for them. They didn't have to work at all. God took them out of slavery and gave them everything they needed. They moved from being oppressed to being fully satisfied with everything they have. And that's what he's trying to remind you of. And then it says, you have broken all of these things that oppressed you as on the day of Midian. Now, what is this day of Midian? Well, it reminds us of this story about Gideon. Have you guys ever heard of Gideon? Here's the story of Gideon if you've never heard it. Gideon was not a military guy. In fact, he was hiding from the Midianites who was a way bigger army, way stronger, and he was hiding, making bread so that people wouldn't take his food. He's scared. He's not a guy. He's not getting in people's faces. He's scared of the enemy. He's not a real big, strong guy that he's going to go beat anybody up. Doesn't seem to have any leadership qualities that you could tell. And yet God calls Gideon to be a military leader. And you think, oh, he's called, so he immediately accepted it and everything was great. No, Gideon had to be convinced multiple times that God is actually going to accomplish what God told him he's going to accomplish. Well, finally, he's convinced enough to do it, and so he has this army, and then God keeps telling him, send people home. Send people home. Gideon's over here thinking, man, we don't have enough people as is. We don't have the people ready now. We don't have the resources now. And now I'm sending people home. Shouldn't I compromise what I believe I should do to get more people? Shouldn't we be putting helmets and sword on women and children? We need more people. And he's sending them home. Sending them home. And yet, this is what happens in the story. Despite not having enough men or resources, out of 32,000 that Gideon started with, only about 300 remain. And then Gideon listened to the plan of God. They lit torches, they sounded the trumpets, and 300 men defeated the huge and equipped army of the Midianites. So despite not having enough people, not enough resources, not enough training, what did God do? God gave them the victory. Just like he did in Egypt. He took them out of slavery, gave them everything they needed. When you talk about Gideon, he took this small little army and defeated this much, much, much bigger army. Why? Because victory is not in the hands of people. Victory is always in the hands of God. And so all the oppression and all the things that were stopping the people, God brings the victory. God brings the victory. You know, this is why I pray for revival like I do. And it's so easy to get stuck in our own little things, in our own little lives, in our own little ways, and try and live according to what we could bring to the table. But I pray for revival because I know despite my ignorance, despite my sin, despite my trying to live by my own self-reliance, God brings the victory. And so I pray for revival because I've seen God move in the Bible with people that are weak and broken like me. We have seen God move throughout history. We have seen God move even in our lives. And so I pray for revival because I want to see God do it again. I want to see God bring a victory. I want to feel his presence. I want in a country, in a place that we would look at and it's like, man, it just feels like darkness, deep, deep darkness, that God would shine his light and that people would see him once again. I pray for revival because I know he can do it. Do you live like God can do it? Or are you so distracted by everything else? Look, it doesn't matter how far off you could be. It doesn't matter how impossible forgiveness may seem. It doesn't matter what obstacle is in the way. God could bring about victory in your life if you would come to him today. We could place our hope in a God who rescues. Now, how is God going to bring about the victory? That's the question. How is he going to shine a light in great darkness? How is he going to break the rod of the oppressors? Here it is. God's plan is Jesus. It has always been Jesus. It always will be Jesus. And Jesus is more than enough. Look at this. These are big promises that he's making, right? Where you were oppressed, you'll no longer be oppressed. Where there was darkness and gloom, there is rejoicing and there's light. How are you going to do it, God? For to us, a child is born. To us, a son is given. And listen what it says about this child. And the government shall be upon his shoulders. You know what that means? The government that we look at and we say, that's what's powerful. That's what's going to keep everything good. That's why we have Memorial Day and Veterans Day. And we ask people to stand up and we applaud because we're just like, we need those people in order to keep this a Christian country, in order to have our rights and our freedom. What it's even saying is it doesn't matter what government you're in. The government sits on the shoulders of Jesus Christ. Point blank, period. That's how powerful this child is going to be. And listen to what it says. It says, and his name should be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And on the increase of his government and of peace, there will be no end. No one to threaten it. And on the throne of David and over his kingdom to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time and forevermore. The zeal of the Lord of the hosts will do this. So what is God's plan? To bring us great satisfaction. His plan is Jesus Christ. God's plan is to bring someone into the world to rescue us. For Israel, when it says the government's on his shoulders, they're looking at all these other governments and they're being attacked and attacked and attacked. The Syrians are on the brink of war, and yet God says, don't worry about any of that. What you need to worry about is the child that I will bring to you, because he will be greater than any government. You know, that brings me a lot of peace in this Christmas season. There's a lot of feelings about the politics in this country, right? Whatever side you sit on. You think they're doing great, you think they're doing terrible, and it flips and it flops. Everyone's worried about what the economy will do and what the stock markets will do. If this is true, and Jesus is the child who came, all of our worries are on his shoulders. He could take care of it all. Period. Doesn't matter who's in the White House, doesn't matter who's in the Senate, doesn't matter who our state representatives are, doesn't matter. Jesus is in charge of it all. And so for the Israelites, they're brought great peace, because even over the oppressors, Jesus is over it all. And so it's a big deal what kind of ruler Jesus is, right? Because he has all control, all power. Listen to what the Bible says, who Jesus is and what Jesus does. It says that he is a wonderful counselor. You know what that means? Jesus listens to you and he relates to you. I think we forget this sometimes. God, or Jesus specifically, knows what it's like to go through temptation. He knows it. Jesus knows what it's like to lose a loved one. Jesus knows what it's like for people to reject him. Jesus knows what it's like to even have your family think you're a little crazy. You know, they have those commercials now where it says, like, Jesus gets it or whatever. You guys have seen that. It's on a lot of the big sports things. And I find so many of those so true that, you know, so often we think that Jesus is like way over here and we're way down here, and he just doesn't get, Jesus gets it. Jesus gets your hurt. He gets your pain. He understands. He relates with you. He hurts with you. And not only that, but he's a wonderful counselor. He's able to guide you and direct you through whatever you're going through. No matter what pain you're feeling this holiday season, no matter what sadness you're feeling even right now, God knows it, he feels it, and he directs you in the right path. But not only is he a wonderful counselor, he is mighty God. Doesn't matter what problem you're going through today, did you know that God is in control of it? And it's not like he's a mighty God today and he gets weaker later. That's why it says that he's an everlasting Father. He's not going anywhere. God is here, was there at the beginning, he's here today, and he forever will be. And he will still be a counselor to you. And he will still be mighty God, so we could go to him with everything. He's able to move heaven and earth. That changes how we pray, right? Not that he's going to fail us later on because something will change. No. He is forever and ever and ever. And not only that, but when we look to him, we have to understand that he is a Prince of Peace. That God isn't coming in with his counsel. God's not coming in with his power. God's not coming in with his everlasting kingdom and oppressing you. He's not here to make your life harder. He's here to bring you peace that lasts forever and forever and forever and forever. So what kind of government does this child bring? What kind of government does Jesus bring? The kingdom that is to come. What kind of life is Jesus promising you today? Listen, he is wise, he is strong, he is caring, and he is full of peace. And he wants to give all of that to you today. All of that to you today. Jesus gives all the things that we've been yearning for and searching for our entire lives. If you will just put your hope in him. Here's my main point. Hope in Jesus. Hope in Jesus. Before you spend the whole holiday hoping this or hoping that or hoping that you get a raise or hoping that you get a job, take a breath and put your hope in Jesus. Someone that really will satisfy what you've been waiting for. Someone who is wise and who is strong and who really does care and will bring you peace and satisfaction in your life. All of these other things that you'll chase, they will be empty. They might be good for a little while, but they're never going to satisfy you forever. Jesus wants to give you the gift of salvation today, of being adopted into the kingdom of God as sons and daughters of the Most High. He wants to give that to you today. And so here's my challenge. This is something little. But when you see Christmas lights, will you just think of Jesus? It's the light that lights up in great darkness. This is why we use candles. He's the light in the darkness that burns. When you think of Christmas lights this year, when you go and you drive around and maybe you have some at your house, I know several of you already have them up, have had them up. Well, you just think about Jesus and placing your hope in him. Because understand, Jesus, who created all things, he saw us in our sin and our separation from God. He saw that we chose darkness instead of light. And where we live broken lives trying to figure out what will make us happy and go after this and go after that only to be more broken and more unhappy, just like the Israelites are here. He says, I'm going to rescue those people. So he came fully God, fully man, born of a virgin. He lived a sinless life. He did not sin once. He taught all about the kingdom. He performed all sorts of miracles. But he also went to the cross to die for you and for me, to break the rod of the oppressors, to give us victory where we could not have victory ourselves. And he rose 3 days later that whoever believes in him will not perish, but have everlasting life. So if you've never accepted Jesus, let today be the day. Place your full hope in Jesus Christ and what he's done in your life. By saying, Jesus, I want to follow you with everything that I am. Because I know you give me victory where all I have is darkness. Where all I have is gloom. I want to rejoice. And I want the victory you have for me. If you've accepted Jesus Christ and man, you've put your hope in him. Let this be a time where we reflect. And we go, is all of my hope in Jesus? Or have I started to look after this thing or that thing? Have I put my hope in being a good mom one day? Have I put my hope in being a good worker? Have I put my hope in this business that I run? Am I putting my hope in a retirement I'm hoping will come? Am I putting my hope in my health? Let's take this time to reflect and get our hope back right in the one place it should be, and that's Jesus Christ. Let today be your day that you look at the light of God. You look at the promise of Jesus and get right this holiday season.